Alrighty, hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Hashira Half Hour. I am your host today, and head empty, no thoughts. All that remains is the fact that Demon Slayer returns very, very soon. And as always, I am joined by my friends.
Hi guys, it's Emily. I can't believe that we are so close to getting new Demon Slayer. And man, we've harped on this, but just the brief amount that we've been lucky enough to see so far, we are in for such a treat. I can't wait to see what the new season will have in store. But with that being said, there's a lot of really good stuff still left to talk about in this season that we're currently on Entertainment District. So I'm excited to dive into it.
Hell yeah, folks. We are at the Lion's Den at the moment. I mean, what better, really? I mean, people talk about the next few episodes of this season for good reason. The meaning, the animation, the sword clashing, gotta be the greatest parts of Demon Slayer. And of course, we're here to enjoy the ride. So, vroom, vroom, folks.
Vroom, vroom. Oh man, we do have a jam-packed episode to get through today. As I mentioned at the end of last recap, this episode is named Defeating an Upper Rank Demon. So hopefully we see some defeating upper rank demons happen in this episode. But let's dive in. We start off with that brief recap of where we left off in the heat of the battle. We get the unskippable opening by MA. And then we get an absolutely beautiful flashback scene with Tengen and his wives at the Uzui family grave. It's a little nice breather. We've been kind of going at it for a little while, but it's a very powerful moment to see Tengen share such a tender moment with his wives. How impactful was this scene for you?
I mean, me not having my depression medication for the last week, everything has been affecting me, and I feel personally attacked by most of these episodes. So it affected me very seriously. I'm just kidding. I mean, I'm being fully serious about that. But nonetheless, watching Suma be diving right in and Makio being like, wait your turn, it's Tengen's turn to enjoy some of it first. It was so cute. It was really nice to know that while their relationship is of course different from the traditional dyad you see in everyday life and even in most other just shows in general, they still had such a wholesome time together. And it wasn't just we're all kind of a shinobi lump that came out of these circumstances, and we kind of hate each other, but we're here for the job. No, there's an actual meaning to everything they do together, and they do really love each other, which I think was so sweet.
Absolutely agreed. I think that this scene was impactful because admittedly, we discussed this in the last episode, but we live in a very Western culture. There are a lot of things about Demon Slayer, obviously, that tie to all of the different aspects and facets of Eastern culture. And so I was a little bit thrown off at first, I think, when Tengen proudly announced these 3 wives that he had. And I know that that's something that is becoming a little bit more mainstream in Western culture, at least in the conversation again now, but it's not necessarily something that I've had a lot of experience with. And it's not something that happens a ton in anime either, to be honest. This is one of the only ones that comes to mind immediately for me that has this polyamorous relationship. So it was nice to see how it was animated in a tender way. Although I will say that I do think, call it problematic or not, whatever it is, I think it's pretty obvious that he has a favorite, or at least the animators do, in this really, really sweet moment with Hinatsuru. Nicely mirroring what's happening, with her being there on the scene for the fight that's unfolding here with Gyutaro and Tanjiro and Tengen. This flashback moment of her being the voice of reason and kind of the center of that Kamaboko squad of young women. It's a nice scene that definitely favors her.
I'm actually going to ask a very important question later on in this episode, so stay tuned. But I love this scene. It's not only just a beautiful scene shared between husband and wives. It's so beautifully animated. You know, we talk a lot about the beautiful animation of the fight scenes, but something that I think Ufotable really has down is background animation, and with the trees and the grave and just the coloring of everything, it's just like a nice refresh daylight. We've been in the nighttime for a while, so it's really beautiful. And I also want to say, I know we've mentioned that actually, like a dub moment being funnier back in season 1. Emily, you mentioned it, something with Zenitsu. I don't really watch the show dubbed, but there is one scene, and it is this scene where Tengen says something in the dub, and it is so hilarious to me. And it is when he says, "Someday I'm going to hell." And then they all react, and he's like, "Whoops, that didn't come out right," or something like that. And it's just so hilarious. So shout out to Tengen's dub voice actor, because that had me dying laughing. What a great dub moment. It is just really lovely to see, and I love any moment that really develops this flashy Hashira, since we, you know, like I've said, we've kind of had an interesting love-hate relationship with him so far. It was short and sweet though, and just like that, we are thrown back into the battle at hand. Gyutaro has already recovered from the poison, which sucks. He's back at it with the blood sickle attacks. It seems that every moment where we have the upper hand, maybe slightly, it's gone like that due to Gyutaro's just extreme power. Things are starting to get a little frustrating, but Tengen thinks quick and kicks Tanjiro away. And then he releases this huge attack. We are already aware that he is worried about him because of the injury. He mentioned that at the end of last episode. And now we see him attempting to protect him as much as possible while staying on the ball. Quite some development for the character. What do you think of this protective Tengen over Tanjiro and the Kamaboko squad?
Well, I don't think it's surprising to me personally. This is a flashy character. He puts on a bit of a front and a bit of a personality as like part of that lifestyle that he desires, that flashiness that he wants to maintain for the rest of his life. But he is still a Hashira. And so it's not surprising to me that his priority is to protect those around him. And, you know, two already have a soft spot for these three. I touched on it in my favorite moment in the last episode, but also like he allegedly has heard from this like ghost of Rengoku, who was the epitome of what a Hashira should be, like telling him to care for these boys. Yeah. So I think he feels a sense of obligation and responsibility, even if we cast that entire scene aside. I think that many of the Hashira would end up doing the same because it's just part of the job. But it does get a little bit personal, because how could these three sweet boys not work their way into anyone's hearts? So I love it, but I am a little bit worried about him. So we'll see what happens next.
Yeah, I mean, I think Tengen being protective in this moment, you know, very proud of him kind of owning that, because you know, from what you know of a shinobi and kind of referencing the previous episode where Master Kage was like, hey, you're going against kind of everything you've learned, right? Protecting your comrades, important. Getting the job done, more important in the eyes of a shinobi. And so I think really Tengen is actually kind of paying Tanjiro back in this moment, because last episode, right, he was fighting against, you know, the blood sickle slashes, and he was like, I've got to use my water breathing or else my sword's gonna snap again. I have to be useful somehow. And so he's like, I'll bend this away, and he's like, and then Tengen's doing the same thing, except he's like, get out of here with his foot.
Water breathing, first form. Oops, sorry. My two worlds colliding again. Yeah, I like the call out of like Tanjiro did protect Tengen in that moment last episode with the water breathing, and he was keeping those slashes away. So like Tengen's like, okay. Also, side note, Tengen assaults Gyutaro with Hoto no Kokyu Shi no Kata, which is sound breathing fourth form, constant resounding slashes. This is a form in which you can't really have another human around you, otherwise they are going to get hit by the attack. Seems like sound breathing is kind of a wide range attack. So I think part of it was him just getting him away so that he could use his form. But we once again see some absolutely mind-blowing flashy animation. I can't stress it enough. I love it. And then Gyutaro's gone. Just gone. And just like we saw with Daki in episode 6, that mystery is solved very quickly. And he is now on the roof, and he has taken Hinatsuru as a hostage. Tengen is desperately trying to get to her, but is getting blocked by the Obi. We get another flashback. We get another powerful one. In this flashback, Hinatsuru says that they should withdraw from the front lines and live as ordinary people once they defeat an upranked demon. And then she goes on to say that they can't bring the lives that they took as shinobi, but they still need to set things right somewhere along the line. She also mentions that they might not all be alive by then, but no hard feelings. I was like, okay. This group is obviously fighting for the good of humanity as demon slayers as of now, but it obviously it seems like they used to not. They used to just, I don't know exactly what the job of shinobi entailed, but it sounds kind of like they just were assassins essentially. What do you think of this theme of redemption for this a dysfunctional family? I don't know what to call them.
Yeah. Kind of starting actually with like you talking about sound breathing being like a wide range thing. Looking at the physics of it, that makes perfect sense. Because first off, what is sound, right? Sound is the collision of particles and in a wave motion, right? So sound breathing essentially is the force of things hitting each other at that time, but also the way that sound moves is radial, right? So it is constantly growing out in a circle. So that makes perfect sense that that Tengen has to be aware of his surroundings when he's going to throw out an attack like that. It's not as precise as something like thunder breathing, where you can pinpoint where something's going to go. So I definitely think that's a great kind of piece to kind of give to the world as context. But this little dysfunctional family, I think it's really cute how this entire story shows you multiple different kind of groups who have come together as trios or as like little dynamics that they've created for themselves, whether it be Tengen and his wives, whether it be the Kamaboko squad or the Butterfly Mansion. Like there are multiple different like mini families in this show that show you, even though your past may have been very terrible, you can find a present where you're able to make something meaningful out of it. And I think this is just another way to show that these terrible things that they've done in the past can be at least somewhat lessened if we take this step here.
Absolutely. I completely agree. And I'll also go ahead and start by addressing the sound breathing a little bit as well. This is, again, we're like just barely starting to get into Tengen being serious in the fights and getting to see him fight to protect the people that he cares about that surround him. Very interesting that a shinobi would fight with sound breathing, in my opinion. And that's not something that we've talked about quite yet, but shinobi as assassins and like the concept of like the ninja in general is kind of associated with quiet or like complete silence, right? So this is like another way that he's kind of rebelling against the things that he's been taught. Mm-hmm. And is it intentional? I think probably. I think it's almost like the blatant use of as much sound as possible in direct contrast to what he's learned so far. So that's kind of cool. I just thought of that. So that's the sound breathing. To address this little arc of redemption, I think, again, it's another way to rebel against what has been taught and to make a different choice. And we've talked a lot about choices and the outcomes that those have. And while what they have done at the time might have been justified in the moment, clearly they have like some regrets surrounding it. And so you can't really do anything to change the past, but you can try to change what's going to happen for you in the future and to try to tread a little bit more gently. And I think being part of the Demon Slayer Corps gives you a greater appreciation for human life as well. So I like this idea of settling down and just trying to make amends by living a simple life that is still in direct contrast to the ideals they would have been raised with, but also in direct contrast to the Demon Slayer Corps. It's its own new path, and I think that's kind of exciting for the little family.
Yeah, I totally agree with what you said about sound breathing. Everything about Tengen is directly rebelling against his past. That's why he's the flashy guy, is because he lived in the shadows as a shinobi. He had to be quiet. He had to be, and he still can be quiet. We've seen it with him, being like, his senses are just like wild. And it just makes sense that like all this goes along with, yes, sound breathing, the big, flashy, lots of noise, explosions, breathing. And I love that for him. I think that's really cool. Side note, I have to admit, I thought that Hinatsuru was going to totally be dead when we jumped back into the battle. But she's still alive, thankfully. Tengen lets out like a bone-chilling leave her alone as he still desperately tries to protect her. Emily, you mentioned this. I have to bring it up. After both flashbacks in this episode, his desperation to save her, the loving looks, the way he treated her, is Hinatsuru the favorite wife?
Oh man, I think so. Like I said, if she's not Tengen's, then she's the animator's favorite wife. So the focus in the flashbacks is very clearly on her and like the memories associated with her. And don't get me wrong, we love the other two as well. But it almost reads kind of chaste. It's kind of interesting because like we've said, it's this polyamorous relationship, but the only one, in my opinion, that we've felt like this romantic sentiment towards, it feels like it's Hinatsuru to me. The others almost feel like they're her sisters, but that she's the star of the show. And of course, we do know that these three wives very closely mirror not only the character designs, but the personalities of our three boys that are the stars of the show. And so, of course, Hinatsuru is the most similar to Tanjiro of the three. I think that's another reason that Tengen probably has this immediate affinity for Tanjiro from almost the beginning. There are definitely similarities between them. So do I think she's the favorite? Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't know if I ever actually really thought about there being a favorite wife. I mean, I know K-Pat Mosh did a TikTok where she's like, Tengen, who's your favorite wife? And he's like, well, I have a favorite wife for different situations. But like canonically, I didn't ever really kind of think about that. And I think I try to view it from like the modern day lens of, you know, the different relationships serve different purposes. And that's kind of what I thought of it as. And not that there's a favorite, but like Hinatsuru is like what's called pragma love, which is like the practical love, the shopping list of like they meet the following characteristics. Whereas, sorry, I'm also learning about my love styles with my communications class. So this has been brought to you in part by ASU Communications. So that being said, and you know, Suma is like this ludus type of love where it's like game playing, it's very fun, it's flirtatious. Makio is, you know, your like almost storge love where it's like friendship and it's commitment and it's a little bit of passion. So I think really I never thought of a favorite, but I definitely understood that the three of them served a very different purpose in the overall dynamic of their polycule.
That's good. They all serve a different purpose. And I think it's hard for us to kind of imagine because each one of us has a significant other, but we have one. So it's like, how do you handle having more than one significant other? Like, what does that entail? Like, what is that dynamic? And we kind of see it, but it's hard to understand. And of course, Hinatsuru is the only one that's here, like kind of in the thralls of the battle. Suma and Makio are somewhere safe, so he doesn't have to really think about that much right now. But, you know, it's a conversation that is had. And also shout out to K-Pat Mosh. We love K-Pat Mosh. If she ever listens in. Big fan. Just had to throw that in there. Also in that skit that you mentioned, it was clear that Rengoku was the favorite wife. I had to throw in some comedy.
Oh man. He's my favorite wife, I'll tell you what. All right, that's enough for me.
I had to throw in some comedy just like this show does so well. Speaking on the topic of comedy, can you imagine what Gyutaro's breath smells like? His mouth is like right next to her face and her nose. All I can think about is ew. Like, think about that man's diet. Like, no, thank you. We'll move on though. Anyway, the stakes are extremely high. I need to stop laughing because we're getting back into the high stakes. Total concentration. Sorry. The stakes are extremely high here. We are shifting our focus to our struggling boy Tanjiro. He's really completely surviving off of his grit and determination here. He's trying to save her. His stamina is so drained that he can't even like start the Hinokami Kagura, let alone do a form. Knowing that water breathing will not get him there fast enough. He is able to think quick, though. He has a moment. He's got some inner monologue happening. And I say this to the naysayers that say he has too many inner monologues. Do we not all have inner monologues with everyday life? And he is in a life or death situation. He has to think these things through. But he's able to think quick, as usual. He manages to surprise Gyutaro by combining the two breathing forms. He's really fighting his place in the world as the Avatar. I mean, someone with the destiny to take down Muzan. I'm full of it today. Oh, gosh. What did you think of this powerful moment for him, even though he is broken, battered, and exhausted?
A lot to address here.
That was a lot. I apologize.
You're good. No. Starting with the smell of Gyutaro's breath, actually, yes, because I am reading Gyo by Junji Ito right now. If you don't know about that, literally multiple chapters are named the death stench and the creep of the death stench. So I've literally only been thinking about the smell of dead bodies. I assume that's what it's like. Second, I think what I thought of this moment is best referred to when we watched it in LA, because when this moment happened, everyone's face turned to me because I was screaming. I love this moment. This is literally one of my favorite moments in Demon Slayer, is this moment, because I was like, oh my God, he's literally like barely able to move. And all of a sudden you get something which I don't know if anybody else has seen before. To be real, I don't know if anybody else has been like, yeah, let me actually do water and fire at the same time.
So
I
cool.
lost it. Just gorgeous. Come on. It's the best.
It's pretty cool. And this is unique in that we haven't really seen this before either. I mean, we've seen Tanjiro use the water style to fight. We've seen the Hinokami Kagura, very briefly up to this point. Seeing them both together stands in direct contrast to what each of the others is, and yet somehow it works in this scene. And I think that just goes to show, like, especially in this moment, like you said, Hannah, he is broken, battered, and exhausted, but he has this immense inner strength that can surprise even the upper rank demons. So just the fact that he can do this in and of itself at all is pretty incredible. And the fact that it's like successful and can help to either land a blow or at least distract an upper rank demon is nothing short of incredible.
I mean, Gyutaro was thoroughly shocked, I think, for the first time with him. He was like, there's no way he can move that fast. His arms were missing. And Tanjiro was like on the other side of the roof holding Hinatsuru. Like, he successfully did what he needed to do. But what I like is a moment like this could seem a little bit like plot armor moment, like, oh, random new power. But then, like, right after, and I love how much story this episode gives us, Tanjiro like kind of recounts how combining different forms to best work with other swordsmen's bodies is how different offshoots were created. So what he's doing, this isn't necessarily new. It's new to us because we haven't seen it happen, but that's exactly how these offshoots were created. So I really like how it kind of connected with the story, and that makes it feel a little less like, okay, like maybe plot armor. But yeah, this episode's giving us some extraordinary fight scenes, and it's giving us that story development as well, which is really cool. He also mentions that while he may not master water breathing like Tomioka or Urokodaki have, he will continue to use it and not let his training go to waste, which I think is really important because he clearly is better with Hinokami Kagura, but he went through all that training, and I really like that he's like still like, I need to like hang on to this. Let's just kind of chat about those two developments here real quick.
I mean, who knows? Maybe he can be the hot water Hashira.
The steam Hashira.
The steam. Oh my gosh. Cue the Attack on Titan music.
Oh no. Not the steam.
Exactly. The steam. Not the steam. No, but I mean, this is a great point, though. It's like, I agree that this helps it to feel a little bit less like plot armor, like Hannah said. And it makes sense that you would be able to combine elements of different things to create something new. In my personal opinion, and you know, obviously we're not there yet, but I'm very interested in the sun breathing form that has been hinted at, and like the Hinokami Kagura, and you know, a couple weird things that have just already happened with Tanjiro. Like, he's got the black sword, which is like a bad omen, amongst other things. And so I'm interested to see how he might be able to continue to incorporate some of the water elements of the fighting styles, knowing that he probably will need to lean into the fire forms a little bit more, because that's just what his body will be able to endure, I think, a little bit better. Rough on him right now, but he hasn't had the training in the fire forms yet, whereas with the water he has. So it might almost be a little bit simpler for him to lean into that right now, because it's going to have less of an adverse impact on his body to use it in this moment.
Yeah, I think God, I'm trying to remember if like the diagram they showed, because like there was a diagram at one point where they're like, this was like the sun breathing was the original form and everything else was just a deviation of it. But I think that was kind of the cool part to see, is like, you take a look at like what originally was there and how these other people were able to kind of modify this power to make it their own. And I think that's kind of what makes Demon Slayer unique, is that everyone has the same, I guess, access to power in a certain extent, right? Obviously, there's barriers to entry for everything, but at the end of the day, everyone has the capability to train their breathing, and they have a way to test themselves into seeing what's going to work best for them. And I think that's what's really important to kind of think overall, is that every character has the ability to find their way in this world and find what's going to make them the most powerful slayer. And I think that's what's really cool to think about, is that there are so many other options out there. And really, you know, Tanjiro is being able to use both of these forms is making him very unique, right? It's like me with my professional career. I've seen multiple sides of the same business, and so is Tanjiro at this point. You both hate me right now.
Oh no, not the job call.
Boo jobs.
Bro, subscribe to the podcast. Let us have this as be our job.
Literally. Oh man, I like all that you all called out. I think, again, the story is just developing things really well, and I like to see the change, and it just got us such a beautiful moment too, like seeing that fire and water together. I agree with the way Bryan squealed when we were watching it together in LA. It was just like, this is so good. Like a moment like that, like why couldn't we have episode 9 in the movie too? Getting to see this episode on the big screen would have been, it's okay. Then it just would have been too long. But Anyway, Tanjiro is now up against Gyutaro on his own, or so we think. With a very powerful Kamado Tanjiro, you have my thanks. Someday I'm going to be able to say these lines in Japanese and I'm just going to knock everyone's socks off. But Tengen is back with both Tanjiro and Tengen. They are one step closer to beheading Gyutaro. This has to be one of my favorite cutscenes with the OST, and it was just like dun 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 dun. You're welcome for that little entertainment. I want to pause here. I want to talk about how this fight has progressed because we're moving quickly now. The flow, the animation, the timing of the breaks. How are we feeling? Do we need another breather, or are we like we're going strong here?
I mean, I think for the Kamaboko squad, it has to be go go go. I don't think they can afford a breather at this point, right? Like stop it. They're all breathers, babe.
No.
And he was like, a breather in Demon Slayer.
They're all
my
breathing.
Husband, ladies and gentlemen, and them of thems. But yeah, right. Looking at it at this point, right, they don't have time for that. Ain't nobody got time for that. I mean, they got bronchitis, the smoke in their lungs.
Not bronchitis.
Y'all know the video I'm talking about.
First form, mouth breathing.
Oh, God. That's it. I'm done.
Oh, no. All right, folks, next week on Demon Slayer. Oh my gosh. Yeah, no, I agree with Bryan here. Like, I don't think there's time for another breather. I would love a little bit more comedy, but like honestly, we're kind of deep into it at this point. Things are not looking super balanced at this point. I think that there is going to be a bit of a struggle here. Tanjiro's already hurt. Tengen's already hurt. Things are looking a little bit rough. So as much as I'd love a breather and something to laugh at, I don't think that there's a lot to instigate that right this minute.
Yeah, agreed. We got to move forward. We got to keep fighting. We got to keep moving as fast as we can. And the only moments we have to breathe are to use our breathing styles. Asthma breathing, first form, inhaler. That one didn't land. Okay.
Do you have asthma?
No, that one's on Twitter a lot. Everyone says that Tanjiro's the asthma breather because he breathes like very heavily. He's always like, I cannot even attempt to replicate what Hanai-san does, but it's like pretty intense. Anyway, we're gonna shift gears to Inosuke and Zenitsu now. They are fighting Daki. We haven't seen them a lot this episode because we've been focused on Tengen, Tanjiro, and Gyutaro. Unfortunately, though, they haven't been able to do much but evade and act on defense due to her OB attacks. Here, I called him out in my favorite moments in the last episode, but I'm going to do it again. I want to take a moment to talk about Bryan's favorite boy. Zenitsu is... he is climbing the ladder of my favorite characters in this arc, because even though he's asleep, this is the first time we're seeing him like for a long period of time stay asleep and fighting, and he's like talking, like he's straight up just killing it. He is calm. And I love how calm he is when Inosuke genuinely can't figure out what to do. Zenitsu is like calm and collected. Even it's making Inosuke like he's impressed. He's like, what's wrong? Why are you saying things and making better decisions than me? This is also our first time seeing these two work together directly. What do you think of this dynamic and Zenitsu's strength and speed here?
I love this dynamic. And it's fun to see our little idiot boys not be idiots for a couple minutes. And listen, when I say that, it's all of them, but a lot of the times it's Zenitsu. And so seeing him almost like, I feel, you know, he's like overstimulated his senses so much to this point where he's like completely knocked out, but then almost in like hyperdrive mode. He is so cool when he's like this. And so hopefully, you know, in the future, we'll get to see him tap into this a little bit more consciously, I hope. But for now, I'll take every moment of it that I possibly can because he's in charge right now. It's like usually Inosuke is the one that's like, I'm King Inosuke and this is my rock and we're gonna do things my way or the highway. But it's like Zenitsu is so cool and so calm and collected here that Inosuke can't, even crazy Inosuke can't help but to like, oh yes, and like follow him.
He's letting him be in charge.
Mm-hmm. He's letting, like, Zenitsu is commanding a lot of respect, I think, in this scene. So I think it's a really fun dynamic. His strength and speed is OP as hell. When he is in this sleep mode, I think would, even if he was fighting like Tengen, I think he would pose a challenge here.
Yeah.
He is extraordinarily strong when he can lean into it. So I think it's really fun, albeit something that clearly we don't get all the time.
I mean, to Emily's point, this is genuinely what it's like watching me just exist. Like overall, just general comedy camp, a little bit of like kookiness and being a little bit of an idiot. But eventually, like, people like don't see past that shell, and then they forget that like I have executive function and I can actually like put things together, and then it's like the illusion. You set the expectations genuinely low so that when you need to actually perform, it's like, oh my god, this is Oscar worthy. And so this is really the moment where Zenitsu's like giving himself the platform he needs. He's like, this entire time, like, I haven't really been stepping up to the plate, and my general personality doesn't like really allude to that. However, when I'm overstimulated, and this is where I relate to it, it's like I all of a sudden have like this laser focus where I have this like, I don't know, like this tunnel vision of like, okay, this is what we're doing, like this is what I'm gonna do to get it done. And it's very interesting just to kind of see the drive and the motivation kick in, because I just genuinely relate to every part of that.
Yeah, it's just good to see him fighting so strongly. And like Emily said, though, it's a little OP, so it's like it makes sense why he has this, like, he can only be asleep. Like, there has to be a caveat because his power is so freaking cool and so good. Sound breathing is actually derived from thunder breathing. So yes, technically thunder breathing is stronger. Just like by default, Zenitsu should be stronger than Tengen. He doesn't have the experience, but mostly because his breathing style is just factually stronger than Tengen's. So that's you know, an interesting thing. He can still only use the first form though. So we'll see. Which is still crazy. Like, he's doing this and he's only using the first form the whole time. Wild. Moving on. We are once again super close, but so far with Gyutaro. He is able to block all of Tanjiro and Tengen's attacks. Tengen gets him away from Tanjiro and Hinatsuru. He jumps off the roof. And just like that, Tanjiro's back with the squad. It is decided that they need all three of them to take down Daki, while Tengen takes on Gyutaro alone. We save Hinatsuru once again. Shout out to Tanjiro and Zenitsu moving so fast in that moment. That was super cool, like super badass. She's finally out of there. She's away from the battle. Is this separation a good idea? We were pretty even before, but now Tengen has to fight the stronger demon alone. And Tanjiro even reminds us that Tengen is poisoned. This feels like things could go wrong.
I think it's kind of hard to say in this moment, because I think it's resource management here. You know, and I think of these battles mostly as like chess games, right? You know, Tengen in this moment is your king piece. As soon as in the event that Tengen goes down, this fight is over. Like, to be fully like transparent, like there's no way the Kamaboko squad makes it out fully alive without Tengen through. So, either you take the risky strategy, leave your king open, and take down your opponent's queen, right? Because Daki is what Gyutaro is ultimately trying to protect out of his own emotional, conservation, and kind of really so far what we know as like it's his little sister, I'm going to protect her. So really that's his functionality, and her purpose as the queen on his side of the board is to provide social motility, to provide them the ability to continue to live in the entertainment district. So the Demon Slayers have taken the chance, let's take the queen out so that way we can capture the king, but we in the event leave our own selves defenseless if we go down. So very interesting play to kind of go forward with.
Agreed. I'm not sure what the right decision is here. I think that they can only do what they can and hope for the best and try to have faith in Tengen. I imagine that's probably a little bit difficult for them, but especially for Tanjiro. Again, just calling back to what's already happened in the Mugen train. However, he wants to be helpful in any way that he can, and I think this is the way that he's able to help, knowing that he is feeling battered and broken. So it's hard to say. Are things going to go wrong? I don't know. We have to hopefully trust that Tengen is strong, but I think at the back of our minds, we knew that Rengoku was strong, and sometimes it doesn't matter. So it might not even matter even if Tanjiro or one of the others stayed, alongside Tengen, but we have to try to trust their decision making in the moment to minimize the impact to the people that they are trying to protect, like Hinatsuru. And so far, that's gone well. Tanjiro was able to successfully protect her, so maybe things are going in the right direction. Maybe things won't go wrong.
Yeah, and I think Tanjiro thinks it's the right decision. Like, Tengen made the decision to kind of jump away from them. He very clearly wanted Tanjiro to get away from that part. Mostly to, I think, get Hinatsuru out of there, but then I think Tanjiro also kind of understood that he was helping, but he felt like more of a hindrance in that battle than anything else, because Tengen had to keep kind of protecting him. So I think he at least feels like this is the right choice, but you still, you have to wonder, that lack of trust that he's feeling because of what happened in Mugen Train. So an interesting feeling. I think that's what we're feeling as well as viewers, is that lack of okay, this isn't good. We got a Hashira fighting in Upper Moon alone. What's gonna happen? But we get some time with the squad. This is one of my absolute favorite fight scenes in the entire show. As I like to call it, the flashy trio. Inosuke is going for her head with Tanjiro and Zenitsu on the defense, kind of keeping the Obi away from him. All three of them are working together in tangent to take her down. I've mentioned it before. This is because Zenitsu tends to kind of be, when they fight together, they go on missions together, Zenitsu's kind of off on his own doing something. And Inosuke and Tanjiro have gotten lots of time to fight together. But this is truly, truly the first time we see all three of them working together directly. This scene is well choreographed. The OST slaps. It mixes all three of their themes together seamlessly, and of course the animation is top tier. The teamwork that's created here is so special. Tanjiro and Zenitsu are using their heads, which they do best in this moment. I mean, Zenitsu's using his head well when he's asleep, while Inosuke is doing what he does best, and he charges ahead. Thoughts on this scene?
I love our Kamaboko squad. Of course, we know this. We wouldn't have a podcast if we didn't love them, but as we've touched on, there are very few moments and very far between where they are serious or where all three of them are there. They've been very split up in a lot of the fights that have already happened, whether it's Mount Nanagumo and Zenitsu is cowering at the bottom. As a matter of fact, it's usually Zenitsu that's gone now that I'm thinking about it. But so not only is he in his prime, and of course, Inosuke is always going to bring his all. Tanjiro is always going to bring his all. It's really cool to see them get a chance to shine together as a group that has progressively become closer over the course of these last several seasons that we've watched. So I love it. As you said, Hannah, it's so well choreographed. the OST is unforgettable and so seamless, and just shows the amount of thought and care again that the creators of the show have put into every single episode, and how they continue to get better every single season. So I love this scene. I can't wait, and I hope, depending on the outcome of what's going to happen here, that we're going to get many, many more with our boys.
Yeah, I think the three of them working together, I think this is kind of the culmination of everything that we wanted, right? Like, and I think we've been building up to this moment pretty much since this, trio formed, right? Since the day that Tanjiro was like, oh, like, Inosuke, don't worry, you're so tired. Like, I can carry the bodies. Like, it was from that moment we knew that these three were going to be together and that there was something going to come out of this. Did I ever think that I would actually see them working so well in tandem and being able to use their three extremely different breathing styles together, as a force to be reckoned with? Absolutely not. I think this is one of my favorite moments in Demon Slayer, because you get to see kind of these three like little boys who have had these tragic backstories, and they've been nothing but goofballs the entire time, but they're still somehow making these large changes in the world, and I think that's just really cool.
Y'all making me cry over here. I love them so much. Just the development they've been through together. It's like the culmination of all the development that we've seen so far, like coming to a head right here, and it's just so. It's exciting, it's beautiful, and side note, Inosuke called Tanjiro by his name. My heart. He didn't say it to his face, he said it inside his head, but he does know his name, and he uses it when he's serious, and I love that. But they are successful. The three of them working together, they worked so well together that they are able to bring down Daki after combining all three of their strengths. I'm so proud of these three. They've worked so hard, and they were able to move to help each other without a second thought. Their teamwork makes the dream work here, and Daki now finds her head cut off for the third time. Poor girl. So, the title of this episode, Defeating an Upper Rank Demon, tracks, right? Things are looking pretty great.
Sure. I mean, at this point, right, like, you're like, cool, they've got the head, Inosuke is like, aha, I'm gonna run around with this thing. Like, he's like, what's one of the wide receivers for the Cardinals? Someone.
No idea. Absolutely no clue.
You are asking literally the worst possible group of people, Bryan.
Okay, well,
anyone else.
Sports ball.
He's running like a wide receiver with that damn head, right? Sports. So, I mean, it's cool, right? Like, because how else would Inosuke take down a demon, right? Being like, I got this, let me saw the head off, and now, you're pretty weak now that you're separated. I mean, it's an interesting feat to see happen, but I think it's the only way that they would go about it.
It's true. I don't know. Sure. Maybe things are looking up. Maybe. I don't know. I do like the mental imagery of Inosuke going long, though. It's good.
Going for that touchdown.
Imagine him just like donk. The head like bouncing and rolling.
Would the Kamaboko squad do a touchdown dance?
Now, okay, so now I'm like really leaning into the football imagery, and now I'm imagining Inosuke. He's got like the head, and it's like a Charlie Brown moment. Like, come on, Tanjiro, come kick the football.
Oh, no, this is too much.
We're really trying to find some comedy, folks.
Yeah, we're doing good this episode. This is pretty chaotic. Good Lord. I mean, I set us up for that. yeah, things are looking great, you know? Like, we've got hype music, we got a cool moment, we got our trio, we got the head off. Things are looking great, things are looking positive. Not so much. Inosuke is running with her head. As we've mentioned, he's being a wide receiver, trying to go for that touchdown. The other two start to look for Tengen to assist in the battle so they can finish them off. And then, this is where everything goes to shit. Inosuke has been stabbed in the chest, straight through what seems to be his heart. All of my fears are coming true. And then when you think it can't get much worse than that, we see Tengen lying on the ground. His arm has been cut off, and he seems straight up dead. In the words of my husband, the first time we watched this, that is not ideal. That is exactly what he said to both of those situations. It is burned in my memory. Both times. Inosuke gets stabbed. That's not ideal. We see Tengen laying on the ground. That's not ideal. That's how he reacted. Anyway.
That is just so accurate for your husband.
It is so very accurate of him.
Pragmatic king.
Oh, man. We are too wild this episode.
Never such.
How do we get back from this? Are we really losing two major characters in this arc? Are they just making it even worse on us, this arc?
I don't want to talk about it. Oh my gosh. We just said, like, we need to have faith, right? We need to believe that things can go well here and, like, in their ability. And there's Tengen on the ground with at least one arm lopped off, which, as Jordan said, is not ideal, especially for a guy who's swinging around a double-ended sword.
Yeah.
Right? Not ideal to be losing one of your hands when both are probably quite dominant. Also, you know, Inosuke getting stabbed through the heart is the last thing any of us wanted or needed. So that's about all that I have the energy to talk about right this moment. I really, really hope we're not losing them, but I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I first watched this, what was this after? I think right before watching Demon Slayer, I think I was able to watch with my husband Akame ga Kill. If you know about that show, you know that it's like 2 episodes in and then it's a major bomb every episode. I was very prepared to be like, well, Boar Dude, you were great. Goodbye. And I was like, I was actually starting to like Tengen too. And I was like, well, there goes nothing. I got like 8 episodes with this dude. And then all of a sudden gone. So honestly, I was very ready to let both of them go. And maybe, you know, Tanjiro and Zenitsu sneak out through the back door somehow, or, you know, maybe, you know, they get a breather and can turn the tides. But I was very ready to say goodbye to both of them.
Yeah, things are not ideal. They're really not ideal. That's really all I can say. I was trying so hard to not love Tengen. I was like, I can't get attached. I can't get attached, not after Rengoku. But the way they wrote him, the way like he developed, like by the time this is happening, I loved him. And I was like, frick. So, you know, not great. We close out with Daki pulling another huge attack like the one she did in episode 6 that took out a ton of people. Zenitsu pushes Tanjiro off the roof to save him. Tanjiro is falling. Things are awful. He's apologizing. Do you think Tanjiro thinks all this is his fault, and why is that?
I mean, it's Tanjiro. I think to a certain extent, when there's a fight, and if he's involved and there's, you know, someone at the back end or on like the negative end of that fight, he's gonna own the responsibility for it to a certain extent. There's no questioning that. I think this moment specifically, a little bit. I mean, this was a plan essentially devised that as Zenitsu, and Tanjiro went with it, right? Because at that point he was like, Inosuke is going to go in for the win. We are going to protect him, play defense, and this is how we'll kind of start that counterattack to really take both of them out. And now, Tanjiro's watched how like I said, leaving your king wide open, and now your king has been taken out, and now your other offensive piece has also been taken out. So now you're left with your, pinpoint striker Zenitsu, and now Tanjiro is struggling to kind of use his Hinokami Kagura because he is out of breath and dying, and his water breathing is really only so strong. Where do you go from here? I don't know. I don't know how you can take responsibility in that moment, but you tried your best.
Agreed. I think that, again, this is probably part of his trauma, throwing it all the way back to the beginning. But like, I think that he is like such a deeply empathetic person, and he comes to care for the people around him so deeply that even if it's not necessarily what the reality is, his perception is that he is responsible to a certain extent. Because when you care for somebody, you would do everything that you can to protect them. And even though, in my opinion, and I think many people's opinion, he has done everything that I think physically can up to this point, he's frustrated with himself for not being even stronger. And when there's people that you really care about that you want to protect, I can understand that point of view. So it's not his fault, but it's the last thing he needs. In the same token, he does not need to go through this again. We just went through this in Mugen Train. So I really hope that what he's seeing is not the truth.
Just trying to put myself in his shoes in those moments is like impossible, because like at some point you're just like, I can't keep losing people, and he thinks he's just lost 2 people that he cares about. It's more than just like, he spent this whole time trying to not get attached to this Hashira, but now like he's been attached to Inosuke like pretty much since they got over their little first problem. He's been like, you're my friend, Inosuke, giving him bubbles, so it's like, what do you do in that moment? And I think he says something along the lines like, if only I hadn't let Tengen side, blah blah blah. Like he's already thinking of everything he could have done differently, which is so him. That's just who he is. He's just always trying to see how he can better himself. And, you kind of wonder, like, what do you do in a situation like this? And you're losing people left and right, and you're just done. Like, he's just done. Like, and I don't blame him. This is an awful place to stop at, but this is where the episode ends. Things are grim, but that's showbiz, baby. Our Taisho secret was also sad, with Tanjiro asking, like, can we really not win? Are we really not strong enough? My poor boy just wants to do something. Like, he just wants to win something. Any final thoughts before we move on to our favorite moments?
I related to wanting to win something at the carnival as a child. Never a demon fight, though.
I want a fish.
I won one stuffed toy once. I sucked at the carnival games.
Oh man!
You want a fish? That's impressive.
I want a fish. He made it back on the plane from the New Jersey boardwalk that I won him on all the way to Phoenix, and he lived for a while.
Yeah, wait, what was this fish's name?
Sparky.
Oh, I was expecting something like Sequalia, like last time.
Like the birds. Oh my god.
Oh Lord. Oh man. Well, on that note, let's talk about our favorite moments. And my favorite moment has to be the Flashy Trio fight before shit hits the fan. There's so many spectacular moments from this episode. It's, as always, super hard to narrow things down, but this scene hypes me up. It in front of my eyes, it's like dancing water. That's the best way I could explain it. I actually got a little emotional watching it this last time. I'm not going to take a super deep dive into why it makes me so emotional, but there's a reason. But it makes me emotional knowing like these 3 have not worked together in this way, but they do it so well immediately. what a special moment for our Kamaboko squad. We all know I love them so much. So I really, really, really love that moment.
It is a really good moment, and it's almost hard to pick one in this episode because there's so many, but since I have to narrow it down, I'm going to say that I really loved getting to see Tengen dive in and the animation of some of the sound breathing that he's using to fight Gyutaro, and like the combination of like there's like just the dust and the mist and everything that's just already been kind of thrown up in the air from the nature of the fight so far, but then seeing the little flashes of like the sickle fighting and the sound fighting happening is reminiscent of Mugen Train, but it is different this time too. So I don't know how they keep outdoing themselves, but every season of this show just gets more and more beautiful and detailed. So I really enjoy getting to see new fighting elements brought in.
It's wild.
I think for me, it's gonna be when Tanjiro combined the forms. Easy. And I know people are gonna be like basic choice, but I mean the animation of that scene alone, first off, was probably like 2 of my paychecks put together. So like let's start there. Second, it's gorgeous. I mean, like the way that it was developed, and I think it really demonstrated both the true natures of the elements he was putting together, because you saw that flow in his movement, right? He was like, I gotta start running. I jump, and then I'm using like the agility from the jump and like the water mindset there, but I'm also going at it because I need to, and I need to use the passion from the Kagura to actually like do something about the situation. I thought really that moment was a culmination of, Tanjiro's emotional resolve, his ability to think quickly, and his ability to actually really hone his physical skills into something that's new and something that's useful for himself. So that's really why I like that moment, is because it touches everything you want about great anime. It is that culmination.
So good, but we are definitely out of time. So that is it for today. Can we defeat an upper rank demon? We'll find out next week. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram and TikTok at Hashira Half Hour, as well as Twitter, Hashira Half. We're trying to tweet a little bit more. You can also find us on YouTube at the Hashira Half Hour. We are posting the video versions of these. I mean, it's just a soundbite. We don't have like our actual faces on there. And those are, obviously a great place to leave comments for us. But you can also DM us or comment on a TikTok, comment on a reel on Instagram, wherever you want to do. And you could see us answered in the future episode. We are very excited to dive into Swordsmith Village very soon. We are close to the end of Entertainment District, and we will be finishing it just in time for Swordsmith Village to start. So you don't want to miss out on that. Thanks for listening in. And as always, umai.
Umai.
Umai.